When is a bargain not quite a bargain? What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to the Whiskey Shed. My name is John McGrath and I'm an Irishman in a shed drinking whiskey, sharing that experience with you guys. It's a particularly cold night in this shed tonight, so why am I not in by the fire making this video? Well, I call my channel the Whiskey Shed now, so I'm kind of stuck in my shed. But tonight we're going to be looking at a bottle of Kilbeggan Traditional Irish Whiskey. And I picked this up for €17. So some great deals to be had on whiskey now in the run up to the Christmas period, which is when I'm filming this episode. And this one is now on sale for around €17, so that's pretty cheap. So is it still worth picking up at €17? Well, let's jump in and have a look. I'll give you a little bit of history and some stories about Kilbeggan before we do the nosing and tasting, as always. Now, normally I like to give a little bit of history and a few stories about the distillery and the whiskey itself, but there's so much involved and so much history with Kilbeggan. I'm not going to cover it all today in this story. I go into it more when I review a different bottle of Kilbeggan whiskey. So let's briefly skim over it. They claim to be Ireland's oldest distillery, but Bushmills would dispute that. I think Bushmills put 1608 on their bottles. These have 1757. Now, what they can actually claim is to be Ireland's longest licensed distillery. So the license date goes back to 1757 and I believe has been unbroken since then, so they have that claim at least. Now, it's Kilbeggan, it's up in County Westmeath. This particular bottle, I believe, comes from Cooley Distillery, but I'll get into that now in a minute. But they are actually producing distillate at the Kilbeggan Distillery again. So, like I say, founded in 1957, it was later bought by a man by the name of John Locke. Now, John Locke is not the famous English philosopher John Locke, it's a different John Locke, but he was well got in the town of Kilbeggan. He kind of essentially gave employment to everybody in the town, provided the town with housing and coal for people every winter, things like that. So he was well got there. So when the distillery fell on hard times and the boiler broke and he had money to repair it, the townspeople got together, pitched in, got a new boiler for the distillery, got it back up and running. When the distillery went on fire, the townspeople rushed, saved all the whiskey. So it was well got in the town of Kilbeggan, and they were proud of their distillery there. So, like all distilleries, Irish distilleries, they didn't make it into the 20th century. Hard times. Story I've told 100 times, and that took out the Kilbeggan distillery. It was called Locke's Whiskey, Locke's Irish Whiskey at the time, so it was old pot still whiskey is what they were producing. It didn't actually bear the name Kilbeggan. That's kind of a later add-on, which I'll explain to you now in a minute. So there's lots of stories and lots of skullduggery and shenanigans associated with it as well. So the distillery went up for sale. There was an Englishman by the name of Maximo. He was a bit of a con man, so he got together with a Swiss bank. They wanted to buy the stock of whiskey that was in there, because aged whiskey in barrels is almost worth its weight in gold. So they wanted to get their hands on that, and like they could have doubled or tripled their money overnight. And there were some Irish politicians tied up there. The Irish Prime Minister at the time, Eamon de Valera, fairly famous in Ireland, supposedly had a gold watch and a few pound in an envelope with another guy, and it actually brought down the Fianna Fáil government at the time. So there was lots going on with this and lots of stories to tell about this distillery. It was later bought down by a German guy. Now, he's not very well liked in the town of Kilbeggan. He's essentially stripped the distillery, sold off all its whiskey, broke up all the china and marble floors, and turned the whole place into a pigsty, an actual pigsty, and put pigs in it. So the townspeople of Kilbeggan were less than impressed with that guy, let me tell you. But they later again got together, townspeople rallied together, turned the distillery into a museum. And like I say, John Teeling then, who founded the Cooley Distillery in County Louth at the time, also bought the rights to Kilbeggan, and he relaunched the Kilbeggan brand, but the whiskey was produced at the Cooley Distillery in County Louth. Now, he later went on to refurbish the Kilbeggan Distillery, and I think in 2007 they fired back up the pot stills again. By 2014, I believe, they had their first whiskey back on the market. Now, I still think this comes from the Cooley Distillery, so Cooley Distillery is still on the bottle, but they also make a small batch rye, a single grain whiskey, and a single pot still whiskey, which I believe is all produced on site at Kilbeggan. So I think this just bears the name Kilbeggan, but it's actually produced by the Cooley Distillery. And of course, the Cooley Distillery then was later bought out by Beams, which is Jim Beam. And then they were later bought out by Santori, and that's now Beam Santori. So everybody gets bought out by everybody, bigger and bigger companies, and with globalism and all that stuff. So that's a little bit of history. There's some good stories to be told about the distillery, which I'll tell in other in future episodes. So let's get in the nose and taste this whiskey. Screw cap, so no pop for you today. Let's just get a little bit in the glass and we'll nose and taste it. Okay, so let's jump in and nose and taste this whiskey. Now, I started off this video saying when's a bargain, not a bargain. Well, this one was available at the minute for €17. And like I say, this is in the run up to Christmas that I'm videoing this. So there's plenty of whiskey now for really, really good prices. And so this one is all the way down to €17 at the minute. But would I still buy it at €17 is the question. Now, it's Kilbeggan Traditional Irish Whiskey, like I said. It's a blended grain whiskey. It's 40% ABV. There's no age statement on it. I'm not sure what they aged it in. It's double distilled and it says Cooley Distillery on the back, so I'm definitely, I would be almost positive that this is actually still coming from Cooley Distillery. Like I say, it's not actually produced on the Kilbeggan site, so it's probably not a good representation of what Kilbeggan are actually doing, or maybe it is, I don't know. I haven't tasted the rest of the Kilbeggan whiskey, but on the nose. So on the nose with this one, I was a little disappointed, or maybe a lot disappointed, I have to say. It has some of the nice elements of Irish whiskey that you get straight away. So you get the kind of honey and that kind of biscuity tone. But I also get a heavy note of acetone with this. Now, from some young grain whiskies, you do get that. And if you leave them age for a while, that acetone kind of smell turns into a kind of an almond icing kind of smell, I find. That's just me. But this one has a really, really strong smell of acetone, and I thought I was imagining it at first, so I asked my wife to have a smell of this, a sniff of this as well, to see. The first thing she said was nail varnish remover, which is what acetone is, and or which is what it's used for, and that's exactly what it smells like. So it's not a very inviting nose, and like I say, it's €17 at the minute, but at €17 it's still a little bit disappointing. So on the palate, at first, it starts out kind of nice. It just for a second or two, you get a kind of a nice honey, grain and barley kind of maltiness. And then you just get that acetone and it just ruins the whole thing. And it finishes with a pepperiness and then it burns. Now it's only 40% ABV. I've drunk whiskey that's 60 ABV and it doesn't burn whatsoever. Young grain whiskies, they do burn. You get that peppery note, which is nice in some grain whiskies, say like the Powers Gold Label. That has a nice peppery note, but this has a peppery note that just burns, and then it burns the whole way down into the stomach, and it just feels like you have heartburn. So, like I say, I think that acetone note is just ruining this whole whiskey. I've seen some people give this great reviews. They said it was lovely, so I don't know, is it just me, but I definitely get an acetone note, which just puts me off this whiskey completely. I'm not even tempted to mix this in a cocktail or anything like that. I'm not a fan of it that much. So yeah, acetone on the nose. It has, like I say, some of the Irish qualities. You have that honey kind of biscuity flavour to it, but again, up front, it's barley, malt, a little bit of honey, which starts out nice, and then mid-palate, it's just that kind of acetone. It's there again on the palate, and then it's heat, hot, pepper, and then heartburn. So, yeah, I can't really recommend this one, but I'm going to leave it do what I always do. I'll leave it sit on its side for 10 minutes and see if it's going to do anything. I don't expect anything to change. It's a €17 bottle of whiskey at the minute, and that's on sale, so it's usually sells for around 25 to 30 euros. Now, there's no way I'd pay 30 for it, but you can pick it up for $20, $25, something like that. And like I say, I have seen other people give this a good review. So let's give it every chance, like we always try and do, and let it sit on its side, let it open up, see if it is going to open up, and we'll see if it does anything. Okay, so we've let it sit for about 10 minutes. Now, I'm not expecting anything to happen here, but sure, you never know. We might be surprised. So on the nose, it's definitely got a little bit lighter. Okay, the acetone note has died off a small bit, which is a positive. So you get kind of some of that grainy honey, barleyness, and a little bit of maltiness to it. So I've seen some reviewers say the same thing, but they don't get the acetone note like I do. But it's still there. It's still there, kind of just in the background, like it's a bad smell, really. Just like a bad smell, it just won't go away. And yeah, not very appealing in my book. It's a mild whiskey and it's a mild nose, but that acetone note is just there, and it's off-putting. So even on the palate now, it has died back a bit, but here it comes again. Oh, it hasn't gone away. I thought it was gone there for a second. It's not. Like I said, up front you get the sweetness, you get the barley and the malt. Then it get that acetone note, and it just sits there on the back of your tongue and on the middle of your tongue. The pepperiness has actually gone out of it now, surprisingly enough, so I'm not really getting that. But yeah, that acetone note just is still there, and it's dominant in the whiskey. It's not very nice in my opinion. It's 17 euros. That's why sometimes bargains aren't really bargains. And I hate giving bad reviews, but I can't honestly recommend it. Now I've heard some fantastic things about the rest of the Kilbeggan range, so I'm looking forward to tasting them. But the Kilbeggan Traditional Irish Whiskey is definitely not for me from what I tasted. So, you know, I've seen other, like I said, I've seen other YouTubers and I've read other whiskey reviews where they thought this stuff was great. So, you know, maybe try it for yourself if it's available where you are for 17 euros and you want to take a punt and have a go and see for yourself. By all means, don't take what I say here as gospel. Again, it's all very subjective. So see what you think. I would never dissuade you from going out and buying a bottle of whiskey. I can just tell you what I think, and I wouldn't buy it again anyway, but I will try the other Kilbeggan whiskies because I know that they are made on site in Kilbeggan. And normally what comes out of Cooley is actually pretty good stuff, but is it cheap? And it tastes cheap. So there we go. Kilbeggan whiskey. So there we go, guys. That has been my review of Kilbeggan Traditional Irish Whiskey. Not for me, I have to say. For 17 euros, like I said at the start of the video, sometimes bargains are not bargains. Powers Gold label is 20 euros at the minute. So is a bottle of Jameson. I would have those too. Any day before I'd have this. Even Slane, which is a whiskey I reviewed, is now down to about 27 or 25 euros. Some places maybe 25, 27 dollars. In the run up to Christmas, whiskey always goes on special, and I would have that any day. That's definitely a bottle I'd keep on my shelf. I'd always have a bottle of Powers Gold label and a bottle of Jameson as well as a budget option for Irish whiskey. This is not for me, but by all means, if you see it for $17, if you see it for 17 euros and you want to give a punt, then don't let me stop you. Go try it for yourself. So yeah, that's it, guys. I don't like saying bad things, but I haven't much good to say, so we'll leave it at that. Now, we propose a toast as always. I'm gonna put some of this back in the glass. I'm not too enthused, but this one is another Irish toast, and it's pretty apt for this occasion. So, may you never forget what's worth remembering, nor never remember what's best forgotten. Here you go, guys. Sláinte, my cara. I shall see you in the next one, so take it easy. And until the next episode, and hopefully a nicer whiskey, I'll see you then, guys. Take it easy. Yeah. It's just acetone and burns. It burns. It burns.